The other thing, we talked about the Bush tax cuts. You could have solved the Bush tax cuts the month that Obama came in office, but they procrastinated. They procrastinated up until the election. And by that time, they had lost the votes in Congress. They had too many Democrats at risk that did not want to vote for increasing the tax cuts on the rich. Now they've lost it completely. If it's decided in this special section, I doubt it. But they've lost the ability to control what's going to happen in the tax cuts. They have to deal with Republicans on it. My best guess is they're going to say, we've compromised, we'll keep all the tax cuts for 2 years and we won't worry about it for another 2 years. But not doing something about those tax cuts upsets small business, because you've got to plan ahead. If you can't plan ahead, you're in trouble. In Oregon, after the last election, the Oregon State Legislature passed a retroactive tax on business. They raised the cost of doing business in the state of Oregon going back a year in the past. So businessmen know that can happen, and until you pass the Bush tax cuts, they're uncertain about the future. Healthcare. A complete misunderstanding of the public based on polls that came out when healthcare was first out there. You had the AP, Washington Post, CBS, New York Times that clearly showed in their polling the American public was for these healthcare changes, and the White House polling showed that. You had Fox that showed the American public was maybe against it, maybe for it. You had Gallup and CNN that showed the American public was strongly against it. The White House chose to believe those polls that showed they were for it, and they believed enough in those polls that they said to the president, let's not have you involved. Let's let Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid solve this problem. You don't need to go before the American public and explain why they're doing it. Let Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid go to the American public. Great mistake. The next thing that was wrong is that they didn't mobilize their base from the very beginning. It was only in September when the president started going out to mobilize the base, explaining or communicating, which he said on 60 Minutes he didn't do very well, communicating with the base exactly why all these terrible laws were being passed by Congress. The stimulus, it was a PR bust. I mean, you can argue that it did a lot of things, but PR, story after story, said it saved government jobs. It saved union jobs. Never was there a story that said it created small business jobs. So for the American public, it was a bust. They weren't interested in small business jobs and teachers' jobs. They were interested in small business jobs. Once again, the big numbers that we're looking at here is 20 chambers turned over, and we list those in the material you've got there, which one there are. A turnover of 692 state representatives and state house seats in the races that took place out there. This makes a lot of states that went for Obama as being vulnerable in the next election. In senator, governor, and attorney general races, we won in states that cover 191 electoral votes that went to Obama last time. This means with our control of a senator, a governor, or an attorney general, we have the makeup of an organization that can challenge any organization that the Obama presidency puts together. What are the problems that we're looking at ahead of time? Oh, first of all, in your thing, there's a list of bad TV ads. I hear a lot about what money did in the election. 75% of the money that was spent on television ads. And my God, if you looked at those television ads that were run, you would have to think that someone on the opponent's campaign committee encouraged the people who spent that money to spend it for some of those ads. Some of the worst ads I've ever seen. I don't know if you've ever seen this Aqua Buddha ad that was run in Kentucky, but that switched the race in Kentucky that was neck and neck to a clear winner to the Republican, and it was the Democrat who ran the ad. I don't know if you saw I Am Not a Witch, but if you did, then Coons has to be proud of having a spy in that other campaign convincing them to run I Am Not a Witch. I list a whole bunch of ads that were run and I'm only looking at the Democrats running the ads. I'm sure you could get a Democrat looking at Republican ads, see the same thing. But there are so many ads that benefited the opponent that were run by an individual who didn't focus group the ads before he ran them. And one of the things we always recommend is if you create an ad, you focus group before you run it. If you had focus group, I'm Not a Witch or Aqua Buddha, those ads would never have won. Once again, the money that was spent is just about even. What's going to happen in the future? It depends on how many vetoes the president will use. In the first 2 years, he didn't use any. In this 2 years, he's going to be forced to use a lot. Number one, because the House is controlled by the Republicans. Number two, because the Senate is semi-controlled by Republicans. Republicans have 47 votes in the Senate. You have one Democrat who was elected who cut a commercial campaigning against every issue that Obama was for. He used a gun to prove that he was a supporter of the National Rifle Association. He shot at a cap and trade bill, and he made fun during the campaign of every single thing the Democrats passed. Now, he's up for re-election in 2 years, so I doubt that he's going to start voting for those bills he said he was against. That gives Republicans 48 votes. Now, you also have a new election coming in 2012 where there are 20 seats that have to be won by Democrats and 10 that have to be won by Republicans in the U.S. Senate. Those numbers are the same in 2014. And there's at least 5 senators up in 2012 that are Democrats that have talked almost like they're Republicans and will have to talk like they're Republicans to get reelected. So what the House passes is likely, in many instances, to be passed by the Senate on a bipartisan basis, and it will go to the president. Does he veto it, or does he say, this is the will, and it's okay? Tea Party influence on Congress, they're still around. They're going to be around. They worked with Republicans, especially in state legislatures, but they're going to demand their pound of flesh. Is it going to be too serious for the American public to accept? Are they going to push too hard? We don't know yet. We know that there's probably going to be greater fundraising in this next election, and just touching on the power of fundraising. You have 2 candidates, one in Delaware and one in Nevada, that were Republican and lost. What happens to those 2 candidates? Do they just disappear? I have to tell you that when Ronald Reagan ran for president against Ford, he had 250,000 donors. And that's what he used to begin that campaign and almost win that first campaign. Each one of those candidates, the one in Delaware and the one in Nevada, have 250,000 donors. Most of those donors are email. They will remain as some kind of power, probably helping the Tea Party that really doesn't have a donor base, but the donor base from some of their candidates will be of immense value to the Tea Party. And I raise money for a living, or my firm does. We've had 16 calls so far from people who are thinking of running for president of the United States. And each time I get a call, I say, it's very expensive to run for president. And each time they run through the assets. Now, some of the assets I knew were out there are real, but some of these people have these enormous assets in email lists or in commitments they have from people, candidates who today have email lists or donor names that I suspect you are going to have pretty close to 16 Republicans running for office as President of the United States. They may not be in for too long, but some of the polling is going to encourage them. I don't know if you saw the CNN new poll, but it matched up some of the top Republicans against Obama. Romney is 50, Obama is 47. Huckabee is 53, Obama is 45. Now, those figures and those numbers are going to encourage a lot of people to get in to the race, and I would tell you that races are going to start around February of next year. February, March, all these candidates are going to be out there doing something, and everything they do is probably going to affect the Republican House of Representatives and what we do in terms of issues. So can the Republicans grow from where they are? Probably so. But they have a lot of problems to deal with, both the Tea Parties and 18 candidates running for president.
Thank you.
Thank you.